Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are peeling back the label, literally, on the massive, sometimes opaque, and often treacherous world of consumer packaged goods. We're focusing specifically on launching a food or beverage product. Most people probably assume success is just about having a great recipe.
Right. But the reality is that journey from maybe a delicious kitchen experiment to sitting reliably on a major grocery store shelf, well, it's immensely more complex than that.
Immensely.
Absolutely. We're talking about navigating an industry where the stakes are just astronomical. I mean, the annual sales of the grocery market alone, we're looking at around $846.4 billion. So for you, the listener, our mission today is really to give you the ultimate shortcut. We've pulled together perspectives from CPG entrepreneurs, insurance folks, experts, and even looked deep inside the demands of retail giants like Costco.
Okay.
We want to give you a complete, kind of honest overview of that whole supply chain from, initial formulation all the way to surviving potentially a serious product recall.
Right, because it involves detailed regulations, these really complicated logistical partnerships, and quality controls that honestly would make most of us just run screaming back to the farmer's market.
Yeah, probably.
The price of entry into major retail is just incredibly high. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's start with that initial roadmap. When most entrepreneurs start out maybe with a cool new snack or a sauce, they sketch out a really simple path in their head.
Like, great idea, make a small batch, find some customers, make money. Simple.
Exactly. And that model works great. If you stay small, maybe you're using cottage industry rules, selling at local markets, that kind of thing.
But the minute you want to scale up,
That's where it changes completely. Our sources confirm if you want to be on shelves across the region or even nationally, the process immediately becomes, and this is a quote, ridiculously complex. And it often takes well over a year.
over a year, wow.
Yeah. It's that jump beyond the home kitchen batch that really trips up most startups. That initial phase, it's actually all about feasibility and reformulation for scale. You need professional market research. You have to work on a formulation that can be consistently reproduced in, massive quantities, probably by a co-manufacturer, without the quality varying.
And the cost.
Oh, absolutely crucial. The costing has to be ironed out immediately. Because, even a penny difference per unit at scale can mean millions in the end.
And then comes what seems like the biggest landmine for newcomers. All the regulatory stuff and licensing.
Yeah.
What happens if you try to scale before dealing with the paperwork?
Well, you risk wasting just huge amounts of time and capital. It's simple, really. Regulatory work, all the licensing, the permitting, it absolutely must be completed before you start prototyping those larger batches and scaling your process.
Not after.
Definitely not after. If you wait, you could easily find out your ingredient sourcing is wrong, or your processes, or even the facility you picked violates some regulation. And then all that initial formulation work, the small batch testing, kind of worthless.
Okay, so that's a huge potential pitfall.
Yeah.
So let's say you're legally sound, you're permitted. Now you make those larger prototype batches. That means rigorous testing, right?
Right. Rigorous stability testing for shelf life is key. And then paying for nutritional data generation, whether you calculate it or, more likely, send it off to a lab.
It sounds like this massive synchronization effort. You've got to be doing branding and sales strategy basically at the same time as the food science.
That's exactly the reality. And you need to remember, when you start producing at scale, your first customer isn't really the person grabbing it off the shelf. Unless you're sticking purely to direct consumer, your real first customer is the retailer. They're the ones you have to convince that your product is actually worth their very limited shelf space.
Okay. That sets us up nicely for distribution then. Once the product is stable, compliant, branded, you need partners to actually get it onto that shelf. We hear about two main types, the food broker and the food distributor. For the brand owner, maybe the most important financial question is, which one takes on the massive inventory risk?
Yeah, that distinction is absolutely critical to the bottom line. Let's break them down. A food broker. They're primarily your sales and communication middleman.
The pitch team.
Kind of, yeah, your professional pitch team. They use their deep industry relationships to get your product placed in stores. But importantly, a broker does not take ownership of the physical product.
Okay, no inventory risk there.
Nope, they usually work on commission or maybe fixed fees, so they're generally less expensive up front. They're focused purely on selling the idea, selling the product into the store, securing that contract.
So the broker gets you in the door with the buyer. But who's managing the cold chain storage, the delivery trucks, the restocking?
Now that's the distributor. The distributor is the logistical backbone. They do take ownership of the product.
Okay, so they buy it from you.
Correct. They buy it from you, store it, often in temperature-controlled warehouses, manage all the delivery logistics, take the orders from retailers, introduce new products onto their trucks, deliver them, handle returns, and crucially, they assist if there's ever a product recall.
They're doing the actual heavy lifting and taking the financial risk of holding all that stock.
Precisely. And because they take on that massive logistical headache and that inventory risk, they demand a pretty significant margin.
How significant are we talking?
Well, the range is typically around 20 to 30% of your sales price to them.
Wow, 20 to 30%. That's staggering. It's a huge slice of potential profit you're trading away just for the logistics piece.
It is. It dramatically changes your unit economics, but for many brands, it's often the only practical way to get access to large-scale retail.
But the flip side, the benefit of that retail placement, is clear, right? More sales volume, huge brand visibility, maybe increased consumer legitimacy, because shoppers tend to trust products that big retailers have vetted.
Exactly. The trade-off is definitely high cost and, well, some loss of control, but what you gain is access to enormous scale.
And speaking of enormous scale, let's talk about arguably the ultimate gatekeeper in bulk retail, Costco. Their business model is, it's often studied, isn't it? A masterclass in efficiency built on almost fanatical customer loyalty.
Oh, absolutely. They have something like an over 90% membership renewal rate, which is just incredible.
How do they do it?
Well, what's really fascinating is how they achieve that loyalty. Costco uses a strategy known as scale economy shared. Basically, they deliberately maintain a very tight, curated quality assortment. They only carry about 4,000 SKUs, stock-keeping units.
Compared to, what, 40,000 in a typical supermarket?
Easily. And they offer those products at the absolute lowest possible price to their members. The goal is super high inventory turnover. I think it was 12.6 times replenishment in fiscal year 2024.
So they're maximizing value for the customer, not necessarily maximizing their own profit on each item.
Precisely. Their internal policy actually caps the maximum markup on merchandise at 14%. It's 15% for their own Kirkland signature private label, but they target an overall profit margin of around just 11%.
Only 11%.
Yeah. They pass something like over 85% of their massive procurement savings, their economies of scale, straight back to the members through lower prices.
So where does the actual profit come from?
It means their biggest, most stable stream of income is actually the annual membership fees, which, interestingly, while they're only about 2% of total revenue, they represent the company's real, unshakable profit engine, their moat.
It's like the ultimate psychological commitment, isn't it? I pay this fee, therefore I trust they've done the hard work vetting these products for me. And this brings us to where this deep dive gets, well, really intense. The sheer amount of paperwork required to prove a product is worthy of that trust, especially for foreign suppliers, where Costco acts as the importer of record. They demand extremely stringent FSVP documentation.
Oh, they do not mess around.
Yeah.
FSVP stands for Foreign Supplier Verification Program. It's designed specifically to ensure that foreign-sourced products meet U.S. safety standards.
Makes sense.
And to maintain that low price and high trust model, a foreign supplier has to provide this whole series of documents, all in English, designed to ensure meticulous quality control before the shipment even leaves the originating port.
Okay, can you walk us through maybe a couple of the key requirements? Because looking at this list, it's definitely not just a handshake and a promise.
Not at all. It's quite a rigorous 7-point list of control plans. For instance, right at the top, you need a GMP food safety audit, that's good manufacturing practices, or potentially a GFSI certification audit.
GFSI being the Global Food Safety Initiative.
Correct. And crucially, you need evidence of all the corrective actions taken based on that audit.
Okay, so it's not enough to just say you followed the rules. You have to prove an external auditor verified it and that you actually fixed any problems they found.
That's just item number 1. Then you also need comprehensive item information. All ingredients, country of origin, confirmed shelf life, detailed specifications. You follow that with a detailed process flow chart covering everything from receiving raw materials right through to final distribution.
Okay.
And then they need a hazard analysis and preventive control plan, what's known as ARC-C. This basically requires you to proactively identify potential hazards and show how you prevent them.
Wait a minute. Just to clarify, we've just covered 4 distinct detailed documents, and there's still 3 more on the list. All of this is just the ticket to entry for one retailer.
It is. For this level of access, yes. The remaining documents include a detailed supplier qualification plan showing how you vet your own upstream suppliers. Then, an ingredient and finished product testing plan proving you actually test the final product regularly. And finally, an environmental sampling and monitoring plan for the facility.
Wow.
That list really demonstrates the absolute seriousness required to earn a spot in a low-margin, high-turnover environment like Costco's.
Suddenly, that 20–30% margin sacrifice for distribution seems a bit less painful, knowing how much verification work is needed just to get the product physically into their building. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Let's talk about the non-negotiable legal requirements once the product is on the shelf, starting with FDA food labeling compliance.
Right. So we're looking at the FDA's own guide for industry here. Compliance really starts with just the basic visibility of the text. Required information has to be placed either on the principal display panel, that's the front, or the designated information panel.
And the font size matters.
It does. The general lettering has to be at least 1/16 of an inch in height, and there needs to be sufficient contrast so it's easily readable.
Okay? And then allergen information. That's absolutely critical for public safety. What are the rules there?
Yeah, hugely important. Under FALCPA, that's the Food Allergen Labeling and Consumer Protection Act, brands must strictly declare the 8 major food allergens: milk, egg, fish, crustacean shellfish, tree nuts, wheat, peanuts, and soybeans.
And how does a manufacturer actually declare them to meet that compliance standard? Is there a specific way?
Yes, there are 2 accepted methods. You can either list the food source in parentheses right within the ingredient list itself, for example, whey, milk, or you can immediately follow the entire ingredient list with a separate contain statement, like contains milk, wheat, soy, and a detail that sometimes gets missed. For fish, crustacean shellfish, and tree nuts, you have to declare the specific type or species. So not just fish, but cod, not just tree nut, but almonds, not just shellfish, but shrimp.
That makes sense for people with specific allergies. And even the serving size. That's not just left up to the brand's whim, is it? It's governed by something called the RACC. What exactly does RACC stand for?
RACC is the reference amount customarily consumed. This is basically the baseline amount the FDA uses to figure out what a standard serving size should be for a particular type of food.
And how does that affect the label itself?
Well, on the label, the serving size has to be expressed first in a common household measure, like cups or tablespoons, followed by the equivalent metric quantity in grams or milliliters, usually in parentheses. So, for example, 12 cup, 112 degree.
Right. So everyone's comparing apples to apples, so to speak.
Exactly. That standardization is key for consumers making comparisons.
Okay, so even with all that compliance, all that quality control, like the Costco FSVP stuff, things can still go wrong. Mechanical failures happen, contamination happens. Which brings us to the last financial safety net, product recall insurance. We probably need to clarify the difference between product liability and product recall coverage. People mix those up, right?
Oh, constantly. This is a massive area of confusion, especially for CPG startups. So, product liability insurance covers third-party costs. That means bodily injury or property damage caused to someone else by a defective product.
Okay, harm to others.
Right. Product recall insurance, on the other hand, covers the first-party costs. Those are the costs incurred by the manufacturer, by the brand itself, to manage the recall event.
Okay, first-party costs. What are we talking about specifically? What gets covered there?
It's actually a pretty wide range of expenses, things like the cost of the investigation itself, the crisis public relations needed to manage brand damage, any loss of business income during the downtime, extra labor costs, transportation costs to get the product back.
Physical retrieval.
Exactly. Plus the cost of destruction and disposal of all the affected products, and critically, those often punishing retailer per store fees. Stores charge you to handle the recall logistics on their end. And finally, potentially the cost of replacing the recalled product.
Those retailer fees, those sound like they could really get you, maybe adding up faster than the cost of the actual bad product itself.
They absolutely can, which leads to something our sources really hammered home.
Yeah.
The need to require your vendors, especially co-manufacturers, but distributors too, to carry specific insurance, including product recall or contamination coverage, and, this is key, list your brand as an additional insured on their policy.
Why is that specific step, being named an additional insured, so non-negotiable?
Because if you skip that step and your vendor, say your co-manufacturer, is the one who actually causes the defect, you could be left with absolutely no financial recourse against them or their insurer.
You're just stuck holding the bag.
Pretty much. Take the beverage company example we looked at. They had a manufacturer whose equipment caused a tiny seam defect in the cans. It led to the loss of over 100,000 units. Big ouch. And because the brand wasn't named as an additional insured on that co-man's policy, the beverage company was facing a $100,000 out-of-pocket loss just for the disposal and destruction costs of the faulty product. Never mind lost sales or brand damage.
Wow, $100,000 just for disposal. That kind of unmitigated loss, I can see how that could immediately bankrupt a smaller or even a growing brand.
Absolutely. It perfectly illustrates why the choice of partners and getting the contractual fine print right is honestly just as critical as perfecting the recipe itself.
Yeah, it really paints a picture.
The entire CPG journey, especially in food and beverage, it just demands extreme meticulousness. It requires really careful planning from the initial formulation right through to scaling. You need strategic channel management, using brokers and distributors who really understand the market. You need that unwavering adherence to quality control, like we saw with Costco's FSVP documents. And then you need comprehensive financial protection, like the right insurance, to shield the company against the, frankly, inevitable risks of manufacturing and selling things in the physical world.
It really makes you realize that every single package you just casually grab off the grocery shelf represents not just a product, but this massive hidden web of lawyers, food scientists, multiple insurance policies, layers upon layers of audited, probably translated documentation.
Exactly. The sheer volume of vetting and compliance behind that simple item is it's incredible when you think about it.
So here's maybe a final thought to leave you with. If the price of entry into major retail is this high, requiring multiple specialized partners, food scientists on staff, 7 different complex documents just to verify safety for one single retailer, how much consumer trust is truly generated, not just by, say, Costco's low price, but by the sheer difficulty and expense a company must incur just to prove its product is safe and stable enough to even be sold there in the first place? Something to think about maybe the next time you open your pantry and pull out that bag of chips or that bottle of sauce.